Hey gang, Nate Bear here, lead technical tactician for Monument Traders Alliance and Trade of the Day. And in today's video, I want to go over with you a key level in the SPX that has just been breached. I've also got two fresh trade setups, so let's dive right in, okay? So let me bring up the charts first, and as we always do, I want to start with a discussion. And you may get sick of this, but it's so important. I want to talk about the SPX. It's the biggest index. It's got all of the key names. Most stocks, and I'm just going to keep hammering this home, most stocks, most days go with the indexes, gang. So we need to know what the indexes are doing. We've got to have an idea as to what is happening. Now, in last week's video, we talked about this trend line and how important it was. Check this out. So this was the beginning of 2022 right up here. As you can see, the market has tested this trend line over and over and over and over, and it has not had a weekly close above that trend line since, well, it hasn't ever closed above that trend line, right? It began the trend line back at the beginning of 2022. It has not closed above it ever until last Friday. As you can see right here, I'm going to zoom way in. You can see right here that we closed above that trend line for the first time in over a year. And that is important. What does that do? Well, it opens up the door. It doesn't mean, this is the funny thing, right? You can have the best technical analysis in the world. And we can say, okay, well, this opens up the door to move higher. And guess what? On Monday or Tuesday, the market can still crash. Anything can happen. But what it does, it opens the door to retest these highs at 4,100. And if that can break, it opens the door to test these old highs around 43.25. So the door is open. The ball is in the bull's court, so to speak, right? So at this point, we may get a retest. We may retest this trend line, etc. I'm looking for higher at this point, gang. I want to see first if we can get up here to 4,100. That's the first test. If we can clear that, can we get up to 43.25? And from there, it's really anyone's guess. But the door is open. And I think that if the bulls are going to sort of come in at the beginning of the year here, now is the time to do it, okay? So a couple of fresh setups for you. This one I talked about in the watch list, and it is actually a shorter time frame chart. So if you look at this on the daily, it's actually a pretty nice looking daily chart where we've got these highs in through here, and we've got this move higher, and now it looks like we want to come up and retest those highs around 100. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen. But you may look at this and say, well, Nate, you don't really have a squeeze here. There's sort of a pattern here, but yeah, you'd be exactly right. You'd be exactly right. But the cool thing about my system is that it works on all these different time frames, right? So if we start to look at WWE on a smaller time frame, let's come in here and see what we see, right? So keep in mind that we know we've got these previous highs in through here. I'm going to actually draw a line on my chart so we can see previous highs right in through here at 100. Okay, and then if we zoom back into that 78-minute chart, we can see that we've got now check it out. Now we've got this move higher. We've got this really nice pattern. And guess what? We've got a squeeze, right? We've got those dots down there on the indicator. So although we don't have necessarily all three key components on the daily, we do have those components on this smaller time frame. And what I love about this is, so far I've done a lot of daily charts and weekly charts and sort of these bigger picture charts with you all. A lot of the stuff I actually do, and I'll be doing a lot of this stuff live in the not too distant future, so stay tuned for that. But a lot of what I do is actually on these intraday time frames, these smaller time frame charts, because you get more opportunities. You get to take more shots, right? So for example, the SPX may hit a daily squeeze maybe 3, 4, 5 times in a year, right? Where you've got everything coming together. But if you look at a 30-minute chart, you get 2 or 3 signals a week, which is pretty cool, right? So anyway, with WWE here, we've got everything we need. We've got the pattern. We've got the trend. We've got the pattern, and we've got the squeeze. So for me on WWE, I would pull up the option chain. And let's actually, before we do that, let's take a look at the earnings. I just want to make sure I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth. Here we go. Yeah, so we don't have earnings until the 2nd of February. So I am totally fine coming out in WWE and doing one of two things, okay? If you're sort of more aggressive, like me, you may want to come in here and buy like these $90 calls. I actually have 5 of them, full disclosure. I picked up 5 on Friday. I love this chart setup. I'm in it. I think I've got them at like 130 or so, 115 by 140. But you can pick up a few of those if you're a little bit more aggressive, or you can go out into February and pick up the February $90 calls. Also a good option. However, if you pick up those February calls, just be aware that you do have that earnings date coming up right here on February 2nd. I personally don't hold long calls or long puts through earnings. That's just not my style. But if you do pick up some of those calls, be aware that they do have earnings coming up on the 2nd. As far as what I'm looking for in the chart, where I'd like to get long, let's take a look. So if we know we've got this target up here at around 100, that's what I'm looking for. And I want to see if I can get long somewhere in here off this 21 EMA between, really between 88 and 90 is a pretty good range, somewhere in, in through here. And then look ultimately for a move up and through 100. Or I'll stop out on a move below, say 85. I'll probably give it, $3 to $4 room on the downside, and I'll be looking for that move over 100 on the upside. The next name that I'm looking at, this is a new name that I'm covering that I found in doing some scanning today, is Reta. And this name is actually a little different than what I normally do as well. And I think that sort of speaks to where we are with the indexes. There's just not a lot of consolidation. We had that nice period of consolidation before Christmas, for the holiday, 2 or 3 weeks of sideways action. And since then, we've really had that nice move higher. And as such, there aren't a lot of the names that I follow that are in a squeeze, right? We talk about most names following the indexes. Well, that's a great example of that. There's not a lot of consolidation happening right now, and that's fine. I'll just look in sort of different areas. So this chart is interesting for a couple of reasons. The first thing I want to point out is that this is definitely not an uptrend. This is a big move down followed by a long 1 year long basing period. However, what we have here at this point is and I'm going to actually look at this on a weekly chart to show you. Might be a little easier to see. We've got this really nice sort of shelf here, and we've got this series of higher lows that this stock is putting in. So it's creating this pressure, right? This tightening between the downside pressure here, this trend line pressure, and then you've got the people that are buying the name, this depressed name, from 120 down to 30, who keep buying it. And each time it dips, they're buying it a little higher. So you've got the bulls pushing it up and the bears pushing it down. So something is about to give. And if we look at this now on a daily, we can see we've got this really, really nice, long, powerful squeeze that's been built up. And I think that there is a chance for this name to come in and break through. That's a little big, isn't it? To come in and break through these highs right in through here. So what I'm looking for is a short squeeze up into this gap, maybe at 50 or 55. And I'll zoom in on this so we can see it a little closer. But if I could pick this name up, Reta, somewhere down here, see this 55 EMA, how it just keeps coming in and testing it here and here and here. So somewhere around, say, 36 to 37. And then I would look for a move up into perhaps 50. The other thing I want to show you, and if you haven't used this website, you should. It's awesome, finviz.com. If you click on Reta here, notice that they have 26% short float. So if that move does start to come through, we could get a really nice pop out of this pattern game. It's a depressed stock, I'll give you that, but it is setting up for a move higher, in my opinion. The other thing I wanted to show you was earnings are not until all the way out here into March. So if we look at the options chain for Reta, I have absolutely no problem doing one of two things. And for me, I probably would go with the February calls. But you could go out into March. The only thing is, look at the difference here. This is an interesting thing to point out. The $40 calls in February are 6 by 690. The $40 calls out in March, which include that earnings series in the beginning of March, or the earnings date in the beginning of March, 16 by 17. So I'm not in the mood to play a $17 option with a dollar-wide spread, but I do think the pattern is valid. The chart looks solid to me. from a reversal perspective. And I would go with these February monthly $40 calls and try to pick them up on a little bit of a dip into that 55 EMA, which is currently about, we'll call it 36. So if I can get long RETA around 36, you say 34 is my stop and target a move up and over 50. I think that's a fantastic risk reward and a chart setup that I am certainly interested in.